ये शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणेश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् अहमिति साक्षादात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्मं चिन्वतामच्युतव पवनचलनरोधात् आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. In this Friday Atma Vichara session conducted by Ramanacentre for Learning, we meditate on self-enquiry by reading out the question answers on the subject matter of self-enquiry, which has been compiled into a book called Ramana Answers, Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950 by our founder, President Sri A.R. Natarajanji. After reading out this week's question and Bhagavan's answer, we will meditate on the answer given by Bhagavan. Following that, we will have a 20 minutes Atma Vichara session. Then our President Sarada would be talking about Atma Vichara as it has been contemplated in Ramana Gita by Ganapati Muni, which is again a question and answers for form which is put as compiled as Ramana Gita in Sanskrit, and these questions are predominantly put by Ganapati Muni and his devotees to Bhagavan and Bhagavan's answers to them. And finally, we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. In this week's question answer, we have been looking at a conversation from question number 81 all the way to 83, wherein the devotee has been asking Bhagavan the questions about happiness and intellect. His question starts off whether the happiness is beyond the grasp of intellect. So Bhagavan first says, yes, intellect can make only see things outside and not its source. Then the question goes on, should I repeat the question? Then Bhagavan answers him more broadly, how the intellect is only object oriented and it cannot make us see the source and the subject. So then the questioner goes on to say that there is no happiness then in the state of the loss of ego. Because in that state, there is nothing to be seen. So how can one say there is happiness? Then Bhagavan goes on to clarify, because one's nature is itself happiness, and in that state of self, because there is no ego, there is no thought to express that there is no happiness. All of this comes about because we still have not got rid of the non-self, and we are trying to understand from that standpoint of view. Then the questioner goes on to ask the next question here. So how to get rid of the non-self? So his question, the 84th question in the Self-Enquiry section between 1936 to 1950, how is that to be done? How is that to be done means how is that the non-self to be got rid of? So we will look at this answer by Bhagavan. Maharshi, see where from the thought arises. It is the mind, ego. Seek the source of the ego. The ego disappears. I know and I do not know imply a subject and an object. They are due to duality. The self is pure and absolute, one and alone. There are no two selves, so that one may know the other. What is duality then? It cannot be the self which is one and alone. It must be the non-self. Duality is the characteristic of the ego. When thoughts arise, duality is present. Know it to be the ego and seek its source. I'll repeat Bhagavan's answer once again. The question here is devotee is asking, how is one to get rid of non-self? We will see Bhagavan's clear clarification as to what is self and non-self and how to get rid of it. I'll repeat Bhagavan's answer. See where from the thought arises. It is the mind, ego. Seek the source of the ego. The ego disappears. I know and I do not know imply a subject and an object. They are due to duality. The self is pure and absolute, one and alone. There are no two selves, so that one may know the other. What is duality then? It cannot be the self which is one and alone. It must be non-self. Duality is the characteristic of the ego. When thoughts arise, duality is present. Know it to be the ego and seek its source. So here Bhagavan very beautifully is clarifying that the self, there is no duality, there is no non-self for it to get rid of because it is one and alone. Then where did this duality rise? This becomes our fundamental question. This duality has arisen because of the mind or the ego. So what is it then we call this ego? Simply put, it is a habit, or we can say a desire towards an object or towards a duality. It is just a desire. Therefore, the ego is not really there per se. It is like a ghost. It is if you go to the koshas, or if you see from the kosha perspective, we have the Annamaya kosha, Pranamaya kosha, Manomaya kosha, Vijnanamaya kosha, and the Anandamaya kosha. And there is this Karana Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, and the Stula Sharira. All of this is non-self. Now, the root cause of all of this is the Karana Sharira. And this Karana Sharira, or the causal body, which causes all other bodies to rise and seem to be real, is outward turned towards the Vijnanamaya Kosha for an objective experience. Now that is the ego. And that ego, which is the first and the foremost duality, causes all other further divisions. It is the first and the foremost division. So this Anandamaya Kosha, for some reason, believes that its attention or its desire towards using the Vijnanamaya Kosha or the intellect to achieve, to go outward and use the manas, use the prana, use the sharira, use the universe to gain happiness. Somewhere it will gain the happiness from outside. This approach without clear enquiry is making it turn outward again and again. And that attention or the movement of this Karana Sharira or the Anandamaya Kosha, looking for happiness in the Vijnanamaya Kosha and so forth, is the root cause of the ego, the first division. And further, that one creates many. And it goes on looking for happiness in all of this. Now, this whole thing is the non-self. So when the Anandamaya Kosha understands, or it no more remains as the Kosha which is going outward, having a clear understanding that the Ananda is its own nature, and turns its attention to the consciousness which is giving it light. The light of the consciousness is making us know all of these things, isn't it? How do we know the intellect? How do we know the mind or the Manomaya Kosha? How do we know there is prana? How do we know there is body? It is the consciousness plus all of this. Consciousness plus thought, we can say, is all the non-self. Consciousness minus the thought is the pure I. And Bhagavan is saying here that it is this duality, this non-self, and its approach outward is the source of all the problem that we are saying. Because this outward approach, what is it looking for? It is looking for happiness, the Ananda. So what is it doing on a daily basis then? This ego has a standard definition of itself as what is Ananda, how the body has to be so and so in behavior from morning till evening. The mind has to be so and so. And all of its personality, persona, it has to be recognized so and so. It has this standard ready reckoner, so to say, in it. And when the reality is happening, when it is dealing with the outward, it is just going on comparing what is the reality with its ready reckoner. And if there is an expectation gap between what it is expecting as the ready reckoner, how it should be, and the reality turns out to be a little different from it, it expresses itself as unhappy. But this is what we are going to face, because reality, we don't have much control. How will the clouds form? How the rains fall? How the events turn out? How do we have much control? We don't have much control with any of these things. So when the Anandamaya Kosha is turning outward to all of it and expecting it to get a uh, to meet its expectation and fails, it never learns but keeps on trying the same old objective, which we can say some sort of an insanity. And when this recognition comes, that comes only through inquiry. When we recognize that, oh, this is the same mistake that I am repeating and again and again and again, that I am looking for happiness out there to all of these differences and division. And here it is, I am not able to find. And when this whole tamasha, when this whole non-self is dropped, got rid of, that is what Bhagavan is saying, having understood that it cannot be the source of the Ananda, then this Anandamaya Kosha is no more becomes a Kosha, says Bhagavan. It gets absorbed in that pure consciousness. And the consciousness experiences itself as, because consciousness is, it experiences itself as Sat Chit Ananda. And that is the true essence of Atma Vichara, to make us recognize that the stick, the Atma Vichara, keeps on stirring the funeral pyre until it understands that even the stick and everything has to be burnt away. And then what remains is no more stick, no more funeral pyre. What is only the self, the undivided truth. So that is what Bhagavan takes us through the Atma Vichara by his abundant grace and bringing out this clarity from within. Therefore, Bhagavan says, whenever a thought rises, which is obviously because of a duality, because there is a subject and the thought being the object, he asks us to diligently inquire to whom is this. Then the foremost division, I, becomes available. It is for me. It is for me. Therefore, it can't be for somebody else. So the foremost division becomes available for meditation. He further asks us to diligently inquire, who am I? And turn our attention to the source of the I. So when the attention which was outward going is turned towards the source, and repeatedly, no matter how many thoughts come, no matter whatever is the amount of thoughts that we may have, whatever may be the nature of thought, whether it is good, bad, ugly, or even spiritual, we should know that it is all in the realm of duality. And therefore, we should diligently ask this question and turn our attention to the source. And by repeatedly doing this, Bhagavan assures that the mind will gain, the pure mind becomes available. The mind will gain enough strength to remain at the source, at the self. With the abundant grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this most direct path. Let us do Atma Vichara for the next 20 minutes. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana. Over to Shastra.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self, manifest as Ramana. In this part of the satsang, we are meditating on Bhagavan's answers to various seekers of truth, on their questions regarding the practice of self-enquiry and their questions regarding how to abide in the self. And these questions have been recorded by Ganapati Muni, where in the Ramana Gita in 18 chapters. And we are now meditating on the 9th chapter, which is the title of that chapter is Granthi Bheda Kathanam, on cutting the knot. This Granthi is a mystical term in spiritual practice, referred to by in the scriptures and by various sages as well. We have a song by Swami Shivananda, cut the knot, cut the knot, cut the knot of avidya, he sings. So there is said to be a granthi or a knot. And Bhagavan also refers to this knot in Arunachala Akshara Manamala. He says, Mudi adi kana mudi viduttanai ner, mudi vidakkadanilai. There is a knot. We are not able to see the beginning or end of this knot, he says. That is a knot which you have to unravel, O Arunachala. So, there is this knot. What is this knot? What is this granthi? This is a question which is asked, and Bhagavan has replied to this question. This question has been asked by the Muni himself. He says, on August 14, I questioned Maharshi on cutting the knot, regarding which even the learned have doubts. Then Bhagavan said, he spoke in his divine way, says Bhagavan, says Muni. Then Bhagavan told us that what is this knot? He says, Sharirasyaatmanaschapi sambandho granthiruchyate sambandhenaiva shariram bhavati jnanamatmanaha. The connection, the link between the body and the self is called the knot. So, by this answer, we realize that the self, obviously, in Ulladinarpada also Bhagavan says that the body is actually insentient. He says, Jada udal nanennadu, deho na janati, deho na janati, sato na janma. The truth, the self, is unborn. So how can I say the self is born? I am growing, I will die, I am having experiences. How could this be for the self, which is totally unborn, which is all-pervading, unlimited? How can these experiences arise? Are they arising in the body? No, because body is jada. But something else. Ahapramanonya udeti madhye. There is something in between which links the consciousness to the body. And this is mysterious. We do not know how this link rises. So Bhagavan says in Ulladinarpada, it is also called Maya, because we cannot say how does the self become linked with this body idea. How does this link arise? And we need not worry about how does it arise, why does it arise, but in one sense, Bhagavan is explaining here the mystery of how it rises in order for us to be able to retrace it back to the source. This is the bridge. See, there is a link. If there is a knot which is binding two things, in this case, the self and the jada, the body. Now, what do we want to be associated with? What is our true nature? Our true nature is consciousness. So, what is our need? Our need is to get back to consciousness. But where do we find ourselves? We find ourselves associated with a body idea. How to get back? If we can see how the process of externalization is happening, that can be turned backwards. The reverse process can be applied. So, Bhagavan says, actually, because of this link between consciousness and the body only, we are getting the feeling that there is consciousness in the body. Shariram jadametat syat atma chaitanyamishyate ubhayorapi sambandho vijnanena anumiyate. We have to infer. There must be something. There must be some link with consciousness. Otherwise, how is the body conscious? By itself, it is inert. Chaitanya chayaya slishtam shariram chatata cheshtate nidrada ugrana bhavat uhyate sthanam atmanaha. Bhagavan says it's like with a shadow of consciousness, this body is working. Chayaya system, Chaitanya Chaya. There is a shadow of consciousness which makes this work. But during the deep sleep, Nidra adau, grahana means swoon, etc. Abhava, it is not there. So what happens? It must be disappearing and rising. It has to have a place within this body from which the power source must be there within this body, from which it rises and into which it sets. This is what we can infer. Uhyate. Sukshmanam vidyudadinam sthule tantradike yatha. How does consciousness pervade the whole body? It is like electricity functions through gross wires. Electricity is subtle. It's a subtle energy, but it is able to pervade through the gross wires and reaches, and we can see the functioning of the light, the fan, so many electrical appliances. We can see the functioning of all these. So he says the sukshma, like that, the consciousness pervades through what are called nadis. Kale bare nadyam, through nadis. And how does it happen? Even for the electricity to come to our homes or to the factory or to any place, the electricity does not come directly into the light or the fan. It cannot take it, right? The power cannot be taken by the light or the fan or any of the appliances. So there is a nodal point. It may be called the dynamo. It may be called the place where the power is received, the transformer, or there is an energy point in each home where the electricity comes from the main source. And from there, through the wires, it spreads through the whole house or the whole factory or wherever, whichever space we want it to spread through by the wires. So there is this nodal point to which the electricity comes. So that is how the self comes to this nodal point. Sthalam ekam upashritya chaitanyam chaitanya jyotirujvalam sarvam bhasayate deham bhaskaro bhuvanam yatha. Bhagavan says that this light, it spreads throughout the body like physically the light of the sun. The light of the sun is in one place, right? From that one place, it is able to light the entire world. Like that, there is a nodal point within us where the consciousness of the self comes, and having established itself there, from there, through the nadis, it spreads throughout the body. But what happens when this consciousness spreads throughout the body? Vyaptena tat prakashena shariretvanubhutayaha. We are able to experience the body because of the spread of consciousness. Otherwise, if there is no consciousness is not flowing properly to one part of the body, what happens? That part becomes numb. That part becomes non-functional. Sometimes it happens that there is a phenomena called the lazy eye, or the lazy ear, or the lazy limb is also there. That there will be one eye which is functioning less than the other eye. Why? Not because there's anything wrong with it, but because one has not focused attention, one has never seen through that eye. For some reason, it might have had some problem initially, and then we have stopped seeing through that eye, and it has become a lazy eye. It's not functioning, although it's capable of functioning. So for children and all, what they do, if there is a lazy eye, they put a patch on the active eye, so that the consciousness goes through the lazy eye and starts functioning. So it's only a matter of the consciousness. Because of the consciousness, we become aware of the body. And we can see this when we put our attention to one part of the body, our attention is not on another part of the body. We are not conscious of it. We are not conscious of the entire body. If we want to focus on the entire body, we have to focus on the entire body from head to foot. We may do it in Shavasana, we may do it consciously when we sit down as a process of meditation. Bhagavan gives one process of meditation and a support to self-enquiry, where he says, just sit down, feel yourself from head to foot. He says, feel yourself from head to foot. That is the consciousness which is spreading from head to foot. Even that we are not normally focusing on, not head to foot. We may be aware, not at all aware of the body, unless we have some pain or some discomfort or something like that, or when we are having some sensation. When we see, we are conscious of our eyes. When we hear, we are conscious of our ears, subtly. So, but what happens is, only because of the consciousness being over there, we are experiencing it, Bhagavan says. Okay? Vyaptena tat prakashena shariretvanubhutayah sthalam tadeva hridayam suraya samprachakshate. Where from is this coming and pervading the whole body? It is called the heart. Bhagavan already told us. So, if we want to be in touch with consciousness, instead of focusing on the experiences that come from the the spread of the consciousness through the body, the extremities or the external aspects to which the consciousness is moving, one must turn the attention back to the heart. Otherwise, what happens? Bhagavan says, Nadi Shakti Vilasena Chaitanyam Shugatirmata Dehasya Shaktayas Sarva Pratang Nadi Rupashrutaha. So, Vaptena tat prakashena shariretvanubhutayah. We begin to experience the body. So, we must recognize that this is only because of the play of the consciousness. It's moving through various channels. Why should I worry about all that? Let me take it back to the source. Chaitanyam tu pratangnadhyam tam shushumnam prachakshate. The main channel is the Shushumna Nadi. Atmanadi vadantyeke paretvamritanadikam. There are different names. Some people call it Atmanadi, some people call it Amritanadi, but there is one channel, that is the direct That is the first channel. Bhagavan says, when we wake up, first, the ego is pure. This knot, so-called knot, it is pure. It is just taking the energy from consciousness. At just the moment of waking, before another thought arises. If we don't have dreams before waking, if we wake up directly from deep sleep, then Bhagavan says this experience will be there. Or when it is merging back into sleep. And the same thing happens when we question, for whom is this thought and who am I? When we question who am I, all the thoughts go back. And what happens to this I thought? It remains with the Atmanadi. Again, it goes on to the other aspects. How sarvam deham prakashena vyapto jivo bhimanavan. If we put the attention, allow the attention to go to the external aspects, to the any part of the body or the whole body, then we begin to feel, I am the body, jivo bhimanavan. I am a jiva, I am an individual, I have a body. This feeling comes to us. Manyate deham atmanam tena bhinnam cha vishtapam. I think deham atmanam manyate. I think I am the body. Atmanam deham. I am the body. And vishtapam, the world is apart from me. Bhinnam, it is apart from me. I begin to think like that. So I have to reverse the process, says Bhagavan. Abhimanam parityajya. Just drop this attachment to the body. This body, I am idea. Parityajya. Just completely renounce it. What is the abhimanam? The thought, I am the body. Dehe cha atma dhyam sudhihi. That is the thought, I am the body. Just put it aside and question. Vicharayet ched ekagro with single pointed mind. Enquire. Who am I? Just put aside the body idea and inquire, who am I? Then what happens? Nadi nam mathanam bhavet. Then the churning of the channels. See, all this which is going outwards, it starts getting churned. And nadi nam mathanam mathaneneva. Only by this churning of all this energy, what happens? Atma tabhyah prithak. Atma tabhyah pritak kritaha. What happens is the energy goes back. It gets separated from all these nadis and kevalam amritam nadim ashritya prajwalishyati. It gets back only to the amrita nadi, only to the I, and it shines. Atmanadyam yada bhati chaitanya jyotirujvalam kevalam tadam nanyat atmanas samprabhasate. What happens? Then the ball, it is resplendent. It just shines, Bhagavan says. Self alone shines. Atmanas samprabhasate. When it is just within that, only the self shines forth. Sannidhyad bhasamanam va na prithak pratitishthati. If we see objects also, Bhagavan says, if such a one is seeing the world, such a one is seeing objects, he does not see it apart from the self. Janati spashtam atmanam sadehamiva pamaraha. He sees the self clearly, just as the ignorant one sees the body clearly. I am the body. It's so real to us. But through intense inquiry, when one holds the self, then what happens? Bhagavan says that the self alone shines resplendent. and it is known to be very real, the only real thing, and there is nothing apart from it, and everything is included in it, and it is that becomes our reality, just as the body is now the reality for us. Atmaiva bhasate yasya bahirantascha sarvatah pamarasyeva rupadi sa bhinna granthiruchyate. When the self alone shines, Atmaiva bhasate, Bahir antascha, sarvatah, Bahir outside, antas inside, sarvatah everywhere. When the self alone is shining, the way forms are shining for us, Pamarasyeva rupadi. Like we are saying, forms are here, forms are there, everywhere there are forms. Like that, instead of seeing forms everywhere, when the self alone is experienced everywhere, then it is said that the knot has been cut. Bhinna granthi ruchyate, says Bhagavan. And that is what happens through self-enquiry. The division, that illusory entity which seems to link the self and the body, gets back to its source. And in this, Bhagavan is also indicating that one who is remaining in jnana would continue to see the objects, the worlds, which he says also in Ulladu Narpadu. He says that the body and the world exist even for the jnani, but they are not seen apart from the self. They are all included in the self alone. The self alone shines forth by Bhagavan's grace to take us back in this reverse direction. He is giving us this beautiful explanation so that whenever we are thinking that this hand is doing something, these eyes are seeing something, these ears are seeing something, we can recognize, no, it is only because of the consciousness, the power, the light of the self that everything is happening. Every thought, every movement, everything is happening only because of the light of consciousness. So why should I worry about all this? Let me just get back and remain as that light of consciousness. So this is the key concept which Bhagavan is giving us in this chapter 9, and he will continue with certain other related concepts about the Granthi in the last section of this verse, of this chapter, which we will look into by His grace in the coming satsangs. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri
Namo Ramana. Apara Satchit Sukhavariraśhite Yasyor Vimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chinta Vihiram Hrudi Chintayami Chinta Vihinam Hrudi Chintayami. Namo Ramana. Thank you, Akka. Thank you.
Namo Ramana. Thank you.